Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. Matthew Steadman is a strength, conditioning, health, and wellness coach. He has an array of certifications, including several as a StrongFirst certified instructor, including the specializations as a StrongFirst Elite trainer, a Kettlebell instructor, Barbell instructor, and Bodyweight instructor. Matt's goal is to leverage his expertise to assist others in improving their movement, building strength, and ultimately becoming the best versions of themselves. He has garnered experience working with a diverse range of athletes, including MMA fighters, football players, volleyball players, and triathletes, among others. Additionally, Matt has supported individuals seeking to enhance their movement patterns, as well as those aiming to lose weight or achieve specific body composition goals. At the core of his mission lies a deep passion for coaching, teaching, and facilitating personal growth, which he is eager to share with the world. He is also an accomplished Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu athlete and has been a vegan for over 30 years. He is a former coworker of mine, one of the very smartest trainers I've ever met, and someone I consider a great friend. Matt Steadman, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Hey, Casey. Nice to be on.
It's great to have you, dude. I know you're quite busy these days. You're teaching so many classes. You just jumped on into a gym facility after teaching a class. So if there's a little bit of an echo in the audio, that's okay. But yeah, you're a very busy person.
I am. I keep pretty busy. I just got done teaching a self-defense class up at the University of Utah. So yeah, that was fun. It's neat to see these people come out of their shells and want to better themselves and protect themselves.
That's awesome, man. We interviewed somebody several years ago about self-defense, and I thought it was fascinating. And I bought a course all about self-defense. I realized, like, dude, if I get stuck in a sticky situation, I am no good for anything. Like, let me tell you. And I bought this course and did exactly 0 lessons. So need to make a little bit more progress there. I should probably come up and take one of your classes, actually.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That's awesome. Well, you and I bumped into each other recently. I won't say what event we were at. We were at a football game that did not go well. It gave us the opportunity to bail a little bit early, and both of us were in line to catch a train to go back home. We don't live too far away from each other. And I saw you, and I haven't seen you in so many years. I'm like, dude, that looks like Matt Steadman. Like, you have very distinctive tattoos, so I know how to recognize you that way. But also, you had put on a good, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 pounds since the last time I saw you. And so I thought to myself, like, I'm pretty sure this is Matt. But he must have given up on veganism because he's gained so much weight. Like, you have added a tremendous amount of muscle. So I ended up, saying, like, hey, Matt, under my breath a little bit to see if it was you. And you turned, obviously. And before long, a few minutes into the conversation, you said you'd managed to gain all that weight and you are still on a vegan diet. That's incredible.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, just the right amount of calories and making sure to prioritize protein and the right carbohydrates. And I mean, the biggest thing to me is just the right amount of calories. Because if I undereat, there's no way I would have gained all that weight, right? Especially muscle mass, because you need the right amount of calories to gain muscle mass, right? You can't gain a lot of muscle mass if you're always in a calorie deficit.
Yeah. So yeah, no, that's great. I'm really curious and excited to talk to you about that today. You're talking to a large contingent of people who are like myself on some type of a carnivore diet or an animal forward type of a diet. You and I on the train right back, we had a great conversation and talked about how neither one of us like to be dogmatic. I want to ask you some questions about your experience with veganism, the reason you do it, which is always a noble reason, regardless of what that reason is. And I just want to say, like, I want to come at this as an experiential kind of a way, not as an argumentative way. I'm not going to argue with anybody. I'm going to get tons of hate messages from people in the carnivore space that think I'm not pushing you enough on different issues. And I'm just going to say to those people, I appreciate it, but you can host Matt on your podcast.
Sure.
We're doing it on our podcast.
I'm not scared.
Perfect. I do want to start at the very beginning. Like when was it that you started to develop a passion for, movement that then bled into nutrition, or maybe I've got that one way or another? Like, how did you start to be interested in health to begin with?
I've always been kind of interested in health. I've been a mover my whole life. I mean, some people will joke around about like getting a pull-up, and I'm like, I don't remember when I didn't have a pull-up, because I've always just been able to do pull-ups my whole life. And I've always been involved in some sort of sport. If it wasn't a sport, I was, skateboarding or, playing pickup basketball, whatever around the neighborhood, or, going to hardcore shows and dancing or whatever. I've just been active my whole life. I got into veganism through the hardcore punk scene. A lot through a couple of my older friends that were already vegan. And then I started listening to bands like Earth Crisis and Green Rage and some other bands that, kind of they sung about veganisms and more, towards the animal rights part of that whole movement, which I mean, veganism at its core is animal rights. Like, there's no really ifs, ands, and buts about it. Like, I was talking to you on the train about, like, veganism to me has never been a diet. Yes, it is way more plant forward than most diets because we're abstaining from animal products, but it's more of a philosophy. So that's, to me, like, when I first started being vegan, I wasn't healthy. I lived off rice for 6 months at a time because I was a poor West Side kid that didn't have a lot of support from my parents because I grew up a meat and potatoes family, and they basically disowned me. Like, they did not like my choice to not. I mean, plus, like, we were definitely on a fixed income, and to them, like, vegetables for some reason were expensive, even though they weren't. There was that, like, I mean, obviously, I grew up in a place called West Valley and Kearns, which was kind of a food desert as well, compared to my friends on the west side on the east side that had their fancy health food stores and stuff. We didn't have that where I grew up, so it was a little harder to be vegan in a more healthy manner. But for me, it wasn't about the health; it was more about creating the least amount of damage possible in a global aspect. Especially being only 14 years old, global was definitely global was kind of hard to think about. I was thinking more about, like, hey, just what can I do personally to inflict the least amount of damage, and that's it. And another thing I thought about was, like, animals don't hurt me, so I don't want to hurt them. It was that simple. It had nothing to do with, like, um, what a lot of other people think about. It's a lot more simple of an explanation. I think some people try to overthink it a little bit, and to me, it was just very simple. And growing up where we kind of grew up, not far away from each other in the Salt Lake Valley. Um, a lot of people always try to bring religion into it, like that's why they eat meat and all that stuff. They try, always use that. Hey, this is why you should. And I was like, hey, that's your thing. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life and how to practice your religion. I'm like, this is just what I believe. But I was never one to really push that on other people and tell them they had to believe same things I had to believe. So, I mean, I
Yeah.
was a very young person, and I seen multiple people, you know, try to adopt this and not last very long because maybe they had a harsh reaction of their body because they weren't doing it in a healthy way, and they didn't have the fortitude to even, like, keep going with it. And I never judged them. I was just like, hey, that's their thing. Like, they lasted 2 years. That was less damage than they would have committed if they weren't vegan for those 2 years. Um, so I'm a little on the stubborn side as well. So, um, don't get me wrong. I'll tell you right now, and the vegans probably, that if there's any vegans that ever listen, they're going to get mad at me. I did not like the taste of meat. I loved it. My favorite thing growing up was shake and bake pork chops. And to this day, I still remember how good that tasted to me. But I was willing to give up that pleasure and that taste because I just cared about veganism and not inflicting that harm on animals. So
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. Like I said earlier, I think every vegan chooses it for a noble reason. And what you're saying, like, is even more noble in my opinion, that it's not like you didn't have the taste for meat. You can still, like, taste it today. And you made that sacrifice for a specific reason. That's very impressive, dude. I've always really respected that about you. How has your diet changed over time? Like, what things have you learned about, living a plant-based lifestyle or the vegan lifestyle, like, made you, change or focus on different things over time?
I mean, I've had to really concentrate on getting protein because, not getting animal protein, we almost have to get more protein than people that can eat animal protein because the bioavailability. And I had to come to terms with that because I was very stubborn. We're like, no, we don't need that much protein, and I'd always be like, we just, as long as we get the minimum amount, we're fine. And that might be fine if you don't train and you don't want to gain muscle and all that stuff. If you're just getting that base amount, that's fine for just like general health. But, I've always wanted to do something to do with performance or, body composition. So I had to learn that I had to get the right amount of amino acids, the right kind of amino acids, the right balance of amino acids. So that's been huge. I've had to learn what supplements were more important than others because I didn't want to just be this like supplement head, you know? So basically, I don't really take a lot of supplements. I take a protein supplement because, it just helps with the recovery and repair muscle tissue. And there's so many great things about just protein in general. You know that. We're both nutrition guys. Um, but the bigger things like, usually when I tell people I'm vegan, they turn into, dietitians themselves, which usually they're not. And the first question they ask is the protein question. That's the most common. But I've noticed as people have been more educated about veganism, they usually talk about like vitamin K2, vitamin B12, like these things, DHA, which are very easy to get from plant sources. So I do a DHA supplement that's from algae, and it's a really good source. Um, People have been bringing up iron more. Iron is a good one to talk about because there's so many essential functions from iron. Usually, I cook with a cast iron pan. I do dark green leafy vegetables, and then also I make sure to get enough vitamin C to help that iron work better. And as you know, there's no form of hemi-iron that you can get in a vegan diet. So I can only get the non-hemi version of iron, but with that dark green leafy and cooking in a cast iron pan and getting vitamin C and making sure I have all my other vitamins covered, I'm pretty good. I mean, it's crazy to think that when I was little, before I ever went vegan, I was anemic. So obviously I was iron deficient and I drank tons of regular milk, ate meat, and I was still anemic. I have never been anemic by being vegan.
Wow.
So obviously something's working. And I will say, when it comes to this, everybody's body is different. Everybody's body creates different enzymes. So everybody uses things differently. So that's why I don't push people to just eat the way I eat because their body might have different reactions to different things. So
Yeah.
in that way, I try to be more agnostic, kind of like we learn in precision nutrition. We learn to be more agnostic when it comes to nutrition, and I try to keep that approach, especially when I'm working with clients with their nutrition, because I'm not trying to push my ethics on anybody, and I don't think anybody ever should. That's just me personally. So I try to see what they like and how they eat, and try to work around what they eat, what they like, and then we try to just optimize it.
Yeah. Well, I love that approach. Like you mentioned, we have the same nutrition certification, and I would approach it the same way. I love how you're dedicated to what you're doing for the ethical reasons, and you found workarounds to certain things. Like I was going to ask you about supplementation. Iron was going to be a concern. You found a way to work with that. The vitamin C thing. I was not aware of that. I think that's amazing. Like you found ways to kind of get around some of those things. So the supplements you take a DHA supplement that comes from algae, protein. Yeah, it's a supplement. I don't think of it as a supplement. I think of it more of like a food technically, but
Yeah,
we can call
it's
it a
more for
supplement.
convenience, really.
Yeah.
Just getting more protein in during the day.
Pea protein kind of a thing.
Yeah, protein. Sometimes I'll do a mix of like pea with like it has like some more of the ancient grains in there, like amanarith and like other grains like quinoa, stuff like that inside of it. So sometimes I'll do a rice protein. It just depends on, but mostly it's like a pea isolate.
Got it. Okay. And then any other supplementations that you take
I
regularly?
mean, not really. Sometimes I'll take a multivitamin. Let me think what else. Sometimes I'll
Creatine?
Oh, creatine. Creatine's actually a big one. I am a huge fan of creatine.
Too.
I push creatine. This is one I do push. I push creatine to essentially everybody. I think it's great for everybody because it's the most studied supplement out there, and they're finding new and more benefits from it. The cognitive things that come with creatine. I mean, obviously I have to take creatine monohydrate. There is other creatines out there, but creatine monohydrate's the only vegan kind because it's just made in the lab.
Got it.
So that's the only kind. I can't take the other ones because obviously they come from an animal liver. Um, so I mean, creatine monohydrate's been great, and I just get the cheapest kind in bulk, and just make sure to keep consistent of my 5 grams a day. And that's it. Oh, and I do take a beetroot powder, and that's more for just red blood cell thing, especially if I'm doing lots of endurance stuff. It really helps increase my red blood cell count. So I do a beetroot powder.
Got it.
So
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. No, again, I would have expected like a whole laundry list of all kinds of different things that you would be supplementing, and you found ways to work around it without having pill bottles everywhere.
right, and if you know the food you're eating, I mean, most of it you could get most of the stuff from the food you eat, right? And there's some things devote, like DHA is really hard for me to get naturally. I mean, algae is a natural resource, but usually you don't go out just pulling algae out of the ocean and eating it, right?
That's true.
But that's also, if you think about it, that's where the fish get that's how you so you get DHA from fish, right?
Yeah.
That's where they get their DHA.
There you go.
Is because they eat algae.
Cool. Nice. Yeah, that's great. I do want to ask you just like strictness. Like when we say like 30 years, like have you been extremely strict for the 30 years?
I have. I mean, I've had accidental slip ups, which I get very kind of upset about. Like, say something like they change something in an ingredient, or some companies will do the natural flavors thing on the ingredients list, and they'll just change where their natural flavors, because they are legally don't have to put what they are putting in their natural flavors.
Right.
So I just have to do a little bit more research when it comes if I see something that says natural flavors, I get a little skeptical, and then I just have to research it, where their natural flavors come from.
Got it. Okay, awesome. Let's see. I wanted to ask you about the protein, which we've already mentioned. How long did it take you to learn how to balance the proteins? Because that is something you hear that like it's not impossible for sure. The different amino acids in different foods, like was it difficult for you to find the right combinations of those?
Not really, because it's actually pretty simple. And then when I first started learning about this, and you probably same thing happened to you when you first started studying nutrition decades ago, you learned that you had to have a complete protein source in itself within the meal. But then we learned as it goes on, you can have the complete protein over the day, right? So, but I mean, that's easy to make complete proteins too, like rice and beans, complete protein, spaghetti noodles and sauce, complete protein. Like it's not really hard once you start learning about where these amino acids come from, especially that you know that you're already making a lot of the amino acids in your own body. And then we just need the non-essential ones, right? Like the ones that we can't get from our body, or sorry, the ones that we don't make in our body, we need only from food, right? We can only get from food. So obviously we need more of those.
Yeah. I've always found it interesting too that like the food combinations that you mentioned are really part of a lot of I don't know, maybe ancient is a bit of a stretch, but they're part of civilizations that have been around a long time. Like, yeah, when I lived in Brazil for 2 years, when I did my LDS mission, like we ate rice and beans all the time, and it was always in that combination. Like you can find that all over the place, even in countries that we certainly weren't eating vegetarian or vegan diets in Brazil, but you find those combinations of food that people learn to enjoy together, and you find it kind of all over the world in civilizations that have been around for a long time.
Yeah, for sure. That's why they call some of them like ancient grains, right? Like, and they're usually very fortified. Like they have more protein than just normal grains in them. And that's also you see those like high protein noodles. So I'll even eat those. So it's a little bit more protein. So, I mean, I try to go pretty high protein in most of my meals. I try to get anywhere from 30 to 50 grams with every meal.
Got it. Okay. Got it. That makes sense. Okay.
Like spirulina and like all those things are just so protein packed.
Got it. Okay. So there's an author who wrote a book called great plant-based con, Jane Reese Buxton, and in her arguments in her book, like one chapter is all about the things you're not going to get enough of if you're on a vegan diet, and then the next chapter is the things you're going to get too much of. And so, especially people that make it to my world in the carnivore space, there's like a famous doctor in our space whose favorite tagline is "Plants are trying to kill you," and I understand why he does it, and I try to soften it, and I just say, like, no, plants are not trying to kill you. Plants are trying to protect themselves. And so there's things in plants that defend themselves against predation. It doesn't have anything really to do with humans. It has to do with like insects or rodents or animals or just this plant's will to live and defend itself. And so you hear about phytates, you hear about lectins, you hear about oxalates, which are, crystals and ions that form in certain plants. Again, like I'm looking at you, you look super healthy. You have great skin, you have great muscle mass, like you look amazing. In particular, like with what we would call either phytonutrients or what some people call plant toxins. Like how do you kind of get around that? Do you find that to be a big problem being a vegan?
No, and I will have to say this because there was always this huge thing about that I would grow man boobs if I eat too much soy, right? There's that huge argument about the phytoestrogens and all those stuff that comes, especially from soy products. The thing with that is you have to eat so much, like a lot, to have any adverse effects. So I don't think hardly anybody eats enough to have those adverse effects. You know what I'm saying? Because I will have to tell you right now, I don't believe that humans are herbivores. I don't believe we're carnivores, and I don't believe we're omnivores, which is kind of crazy to think about. But I feel like I just think eating most things you eat in moderation is the best way to go. So you're not, like I would have to eat so much soy to start growing breasts. Like I would have to eat more soy in a day than I could probably even consume ever. And so I've never had problems with that. And then also what a lot of people don't get is you can eat other things to counteract those bad things. There's other things in other foods that you can counteract. So if you learn, like, say those phytoestrogens, which I will admit right now, if you overeat them, yes, you will get some adverse effects. But if you eat vegetables from the cruciferous family, so broccoli, cauliflower, that counteracts those phytoestrogens. So that's why usually you actually see naturally when people are serving tofu, they're a lot of times serving broccoli and cauliflower as well. Like if you go to like a Asian restaurant where they serve a lot of tofu, a lot of their dishes have broccoli and cauliflower in it because they naturally want to counteract those phytoestrogens.
Got it. Yeah, it's interesting. Oxalate is one in particular that we get in our space. We get really, really worked up by. It's I tell a lot of people like they have to be very, very careful, in particular with something like spinach. Like spinach just has a whole lot of this oxalate, and like you have to just be careful. It's something that can build up in people and cause damage. And I know people where that has happened, but like on the ground level where I am, practically speaking, the people that I work with, I don't really see a ton of people who that affects. And again, I know that it does. It's just not something on a day-to-day basis that I have to worry about with most people.
And it's the same thing. Like if people like overeat like blueberries, they can start getting like kidney stones. Okay, you have to eat a lot.
Yeah. Well, you see it in the carnivore space with people eating liver and they get vitamin A toxicity.
Right. Or people don't get some other nutrients and they get gout. So it's just like, and I don't mind like people, I get that it's called carnivore, but I know people aren't 100% carnivore. I know that's like impossible, especially like you see, what's that doctor? You know who I'm talking about. He's like Castellano or whatever.
Dr. Chafee?
Carnivore MD.
That's Dr. Chafee. So he's the one I referenced earlier with the plants are trying to kill you.
I mean, he even kind of conceded where, okay, he needs to eat a little bit of fruit. You know what I mean? Like, I actually liked that part about him to where he was like, hey, I needed to start adding a little bit of fruit because I need those nutrients. He wasn't just like, hey, I'm just not going to eat these.
Yeah, I got it mixed up. You're talking about Dr. Paul Saladino. Yeah.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
I mean, so he was like, kind of realized, okay, I need a little bit of fruit in my diet because it helped with digestion stuff. It helped with that, getting that vitamin C, getting other things that he just needed. So, um, and you know, I get those taglines, and we need to put uh uh what's the word for it? We need to put labels on things. But I get most people that are doing a carnivore diet don't believe they're actual carnivores.
Yeah. No, that's a good point, and I try to be really clear when I work with people to say that I appreciate that the definition of carnivore in nature is a carnivore eats like 70 to 75 of their calories from animal products.
Yeah.
That way, you don't have to get worked up. Like I drink coffee. That I had coffee almost not every day, but almost every day since I've been 6.5 years of what I consider carnivore.
Yeah.
Like that automatically, if we go by a strict definition, you would say like Casey's not a carnivore. It's like right there. You know what I mean? So I appreciate the point, and I also get really upset when people in the carnivore space like freak out on somebody else when they post a picture of their burger patties, and there's like a sliver of an avocado on there, and everybody goes, "Oh, avocado." That didn't come from an animal. Like, no, really, it didn't.
But I also went through the same thing with because I was in the CrossFit community for so many years, and the Paleolithic diet was huge, and I would always kind of do some tongue in cheek, like they'd be eating an orange, and I'd be like, "Hey, that's not native to where we are, so that's not paleo," and I just mess around with them. I actually didn't mind them being on the paleo because usually they were way healthier on the paleo diet than lots of other choices, and usually they just ate way better saying they were on the paleo diet. And then that turned into, then keto got big, and then and that's fine. Like if it makes people eat better, I don't care what diet they say they're doing.
Perfect. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And keto, that reminds me, I wanted to ask you about fat. Where are your fat sources? How do you get a certain amount of fat in your diet? I'm not sure like what kind of macro splits you're
Lots of
trying to
avocado.
achieve. Avocado.
I love avocado. I can eat those just straight up. Avocado, nuts, seeds, coconut. Those are my main, like, I'll do chia seeds, a lot of chia seeds and things, a lot of flax. I went more towards chia seeds for a lot of years, just because it has a little bit more omega-3s and omega-6s and stuff like that. But yeah, I get plenty of fat. Sometimes I'll eat the coconut yogurt, which is basically all fat. Sometimes it's just a little hard to eat because it doesn't taste the greatest. But yeah, I'll do like koyo, which is basically like you're eating like 90% fat. And sometimes that can get away from me a little bit, making sure I get enough fat, because I think fat is totally important. Like fat to me is the hardest macronutrient for me to work with my clients with sometimes, because they think they're going to get fat
Right.
from eating fat. And I'm like,
Totally.
no, the more fat you eat, the more you can utilize. You know what I mean? So I mean, fat can definitely go by the wayside. So if I feel like I'm getting a little low on my dietary fat, I'll like just start eating. I'll just snack on some almonds. I'll snack on some different kind of mixed nuts and stuff like that. But besides that, I just make sure when I'm building my plate for my main meals, maybe not for snacks, but my main meals, I definitely make sure to have a good amount of fat on my plate.
Got
And
it.
it's usually coming from something like avocados or some sort of nuts or seeds.
Got it. Do you
So,
deal with any kind of like digestive distress, like with a kind of what I would assume is like a higher fiber diet?
yes. So I actually have to watch because I can easily eat too much fiber, and that can become a problem.
Got it.
I'll just be on the toilet the whole day.
Yeah.
So
Got it.
I try. I can't eat like Raisin Bran because it will put me over my daily fiber, what I need for my daily fiber. So I do have to watch that a little bit, because yes, fiber, to me, I do believe fiber is important, but I do believe, just like with anything, you can eat too much.
Got
And
it.
so I do have to, because I'll get, I think if you eat too much fiber, it could cause flatulence, like all these different things. So you do have to be careful not going too much over on your fiber. I mean, like I said, I think the minimum amount of fiber is important to get. So you have that roughage and everything like that. So you're not just, so you have solid stools.
Got it. Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely, like, when I was younger, I didn't pay attention to that. And I would be, wow, my stomach's, filling. But then I had to really just educate myself on not getting too much fiber. And then I'd be like, man, I love Raisin Bran. I'm like, wait, I can't have it because I'm already getting all this other fiber
Got it.
from my diet. So I definitely have to be careful with that for sure.
Yeah. I would wonder if, I mean, I'm sure you figured this out, but like a simple swap of like, okay, I'm going to bring the fiber down tomorrow and increase the fat. Maybe have more of the coconut or the avocado kind of thing, if that tends to help.
Yeah, for sure. For
Cool.
sure.
Got it.
Yeah, because I get plenty of fiber from, all the vegetables and fruit I eat.
Got
'Cause
it.
there's so much fiber, like, in like a lot of the things I eat. So
Got it. Okay. Do you, how much do you know about the carnivore community as far as like ethics goes?
I mean, I mostly get just the counter arguments to veganism when I
You
hear
do.
people talk about it. And I don't I so I've had so many discussions of, because just being like this long, um being vegan for this long, I've just heard like every single argument under the sun. And I just tell people, like, I can't change their ethics. But I mean, I don't mind touching on it and talking about it, but it's like, I have my ethics, they have their ethics, and neither one of us are wrong. You know what I mean? So I don't like to tell anybody they're wrong or right about it.
Yeah. It's just, it's been a little, I don't know if it's surprising is the right word, but being in this community for as long as I have, it's striking to know how many people are eating animals but care so much about animals and have this like push and pull within them that we have to grapple with this too. And I have to say, like, I eat conventional meat. I
Mm-hmm.
understand that my conventional meat at some point has probably gone onto a feedlot. At some point, it's probably not the best. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
out in nature taking an animal in the most like spiritual, religious kind of a way. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing that. So I've said this before. I think it makes me somewhat of a hypocrite. I know a lot of people who only have grass-fed, grass-finished, or they're hunting their own game and they're taking in animals in the way that I would say is the most ethical. But the counter argument that a lot of people would say is like, in the carnivore space, we understand that everything has some form of destruction to raise fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds. Like, there's things that you have to do that alter the landscape, that kill
Mm-hmm.
native animals, harvesting, all that stuff. And so the counter argument is like, well, if we can have one cow and have that cow have a great life, poop everywhere, take some of the carbon out of the soil, and then cause one death that then provides life for such a long amount. That's the way we kind of think of it and we approach it. What do you think about that? Like, I like where I think you're going to go, because I think you said,
Yeah.
like, we have different viewpoints and maybe neither one is that wrong. I don't know.
Right. And I will say, this argument is actually fairly new compared to a lot of the other arguments when it comes to this. And I do, and this might sound a little harsh, but I feel like it's just a justification almost to be able to eat the animal and be like, feel good about it. And that might sound a little harsh. And so they're like, well, the vegans are being hypocritical because they're letting all these bugs die because of this wheat field, right? But we don't eat that stuff, so we're not having all those bugs die, but we're still killing these other animals. So it's just sixes. So basically, because what happens that I notice is a lot of people that are carnivore, they think that vegans think they're higher than them on a moral level. So they're trying to even out that morality. And to me, there is actually not. There's never going to be any moral uh, balance, because to me, like, I'd rather somebody say like, well, I just don't care. I'm like, that's what I understand. Like, if you don't care, that's fine. But it sucks because a lot of people actually do care, but they might just don't want to go to to them what's been put in their mind as an extreme belief when it's not really. But in their mind, they grew up thinking, oh, this is an extreme belief not to eat meat. When in a lot of the Eastern cultures, it's normal not to eat meat. You know what I mean? So I actually had this good discussion with a pastor, and we were talking about moral ambiguity, where not everything's just wrong or right. There's a lot of things in the middle. And I kind of think that's the way I go towards it. Like, people grow up different ways. People grow up in different religions, different moral compasses. You know, they get brought up differently, you know, and they usually get ingrained from them from from a young age on kind of their morals. They're not born with, nobody's born with morals, right? So they get taught certain things as they grow up in their community. But you have two different communities that believe two different total things. One might be mostly vegetarian, one might be like, hey, we eat a lot of meat because that's what we have access to. Who's wrong, who's right? Nobody knows. Really, they don't. So I think it's people trying to, for one, yes, there is vegans that put their argument on a pedestal, and then there is carnivores that put their argument on a pedestal. When they almost probably have more in common in a lot of different things, like especially when caring about nutrition, caring about health, caring about all these things. They probably have way more in common than they ever would think when they just come together and actually try to like talk about it from, like, I want to talk about it from your point of view, Casey. Like, I want to talk about it like, why would he feel this way? Why would he believe this? Because he grew up the way he did, and then I would want him to like put himself in my shoes and see how I thought as well. So I think if people could do that, it would go a long way. But saying that, I'm always going to have my the way I feel more morally, but it's hard for me to tell somebody that they're bad or, you know, good and evil, the whole good and evil thing, which gets so overplayed. Because to me, I don't think anybody's inherently evil when it comes to like just generally. I mean, of course there is some evil out there, but that's why I would never say, like, I mean, most of my friends growing up all ate meat. They ate a lot of it, and I loved them all. I still love them all. I never judged them for that. They did so much for me, and we never let me being vegan and them eating lots of meat get in the way of anything. You know what I mean? So, so to that argument, I mean, it was almost more like a Ted Nugent thing. That guy, he talked about that stuff, and to me, yes, that does happen. Insects get killed. I mean, rodents get killed in that sense. But if you go to like a fully vegan community where they're putting their own, just like when you're talking about like grass-fed meat and like, you know, the cow is nice and happy until it dies and then we eat it. If you go to like a fully like organic like farm that's not a factory farm, it's going to be the same thing. They're not killing insects. They're not using insecticide. They're not using all these chemicals. So if you go to like a fully vegan farm, you won't find all that stuff you find on the factory farm. And I think where most of us are against like all that, like it's just like being against like the big corporations, right? Like I think we're all against that. Like we're way against like the just on the mass level. I think we're all against that in some way, shape, or form. You know what I mean? So I think we're really almost arguing for the same thing. And I know that might sound weird, but I think we are almost arguing for the same thing, but just in different aspects. Because if I went to somebody that like they only bow hunt and they only eat all that meat and I have friends like this. They only eat the meat that they use from the animal. You know what I mean? Just like kind of like indigenous people, you know, they use the whole animal and everything, which is super, you know, that's better than just on an assembly line, all these animals getting killed for no good reason. And they're not even using 80% of the animal, right? I mean, that's a travesty. It's sad. Like these animals are dying for no reason except for gluttony and greed. You know what I mean? So it does get sad. And then on the other end, you see these huge cornfields and I mean, a lot of the produce doesn't look like it did even 60 years ago. Like if you compare them, they're so different because they've used so many chemicals and done so much crossbreeding and all this stuff. you know, it doesn't look the same, but that's because of also gluttony and greed. It's the same thing. So that's my point of view.
I really appreciate that. This has been so much fun to kind of talk about this aspect of things. And I agree with you. I've always said that like we put things on a scale and like vegans are on the one side and way on the other side of the scale is where carnivores are. But we should redo the scale and say like, let's do a new scale that says, here are the people that don't give a shit about any of that stuff and don't think about nutrition, don't think about ethics. And let's go over to the other side and people do think about nutrition, think about ethics and however they work themselves out. And that puts the two of us side by side with so much more in common that we have differences. So I really, dude, I so much respect what you do as far as the nutrition goes. I think that's wonderful. You're very thoughtful about it. I knew this is going to be a really productive conversation as far as that side of things went. So thank you for answering all those questions. I absolutely love it. And I know that if the two of us went and sat down at a restaurant, the two of us could, you know, eat whatever we wanted and we'd be able to have a great conversation. It wouldn't be that big of a deal. So I love that. I do want to spend some time talking about your training as well. We've had a few different StrongFirst instructors on the show. Since I met you, you were the first person to introduce me to StrongFirst. And I've been able to tell some of these other trainers because of my experience with you that like StrongFirst for some reason is just on this like whole other level of like what you have to do in education. And you know, what was it about the StrongFirst that kind of led you in at least that direction, regardless of how much you still use them, do stuff with them, that kind of thing. What was it like to go down that process, and what do you think sets them and that style of coaching and training apart from others?
I mean, I just liked it because there was a high standard of movement, and the education goes very deep. And I love how they put things in a washing machine, essentially. Like they put movement information and they put it in a washing machine and they try to get the best version out. It's not just like, oh, hey, we're stuck on this, because it's changed a lot over the years. When Pavel first wrote the Kettlebell Challenge, or the RKC, the Russian Kettlebell Challenge, the book, I mean, his movement was a lot different than after like Brett Jones and Gray Cook from Functional Movement Systems.
Yeah.
They all got a hold of that, and they changed up some of the movement just to make it more optimal for like power from the hips. Because before, when it very first started, when it was just RKC, which if you're StrongFirst or Kettlebell, you know what RKC is. It's RKC still around. It's almost like the same thing as StrongFirst, but that's what Pavel was involved with first. That's what he coined, was the Russian Kettlebell certification. Anyway, so it was a very much higher hip hinge. So it almost looked more like a Romanian deadlift. And now, over evolution, it's turned into like, we call it the most athletic position, because if you look like a shortstop or a linebacker, if you look at the position they're in, where they start from, it's the athletic position. And that's where they're going to get the most power and can react the best from that position. So the bottom of the swing is basically just turned into like, if you look at like how a linebacker sets up or a shortstop sets up, it's in that position to where they can react and create power, but in a more dynamic way. Because I mean, obviously power can just be like just jumping up and down, right? Or just doing like a barbell clean or something. But you're usually not going to do that in an athletic event, right? You're going to move in multi directions. So it's just evolved over the years, and it's been great. And I love a lot of their stuff because, like, if you look at their manual, it started being like this thin, and now it's like this thick because they just added so much information, and they get information from so many other um, people, and they're not scared to share it or even change earlier information they had. They're not scared to be like, oh, hey, like this is a better way. Let's do it.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
gotcha.
So that's what I've always loved about StrongFirst. But saying that, I have been working on my own certification, which I just felt like I've been with them for so long. So I'm starting my own kind of kettlebell certification entity, which is still in the ground level, that I'm working on with a partner of mine, which will definitely have some roots from StrongFirst, yes, because I learned so much from them and their instructors, which I love so much, and I still am very close friends with a lot of them. And but I mean, I'm in my 40s. It's just like somebody like, starting their own business away from another business because, just because they're ready and they feel like they're ready. So yeah, I am starting to teach my own workshops, doing my own thing with that in that realm, which will definitely have a lot of Strong First information, maybe based from Strong First stuff. I mean, everybody gets their information from somewhere, so it's not like they just invented all the information they got. They got it from other resources. You know what I
Right.
mean? So
Yeah.
I'll use them as a resource, but then I'm adding my own accent on everything, going more towards the performance space instead of just technique. Yes, I'm still going to be strict about technique and all that stuff, but I'm definitely adding a higher and more stringent thing towards the performance end.
Got it.
So,
Yeah, that's awesome. I want to ask you a few more details about that, but before we do, we mentioned in the introduction, your experience with barbells, your experience with kettlebells, your experience with body weight. You've got individual certifications and all those things, and you've always struck me as somebody who really nothing is on the table. I think if it were me and I were going through a certain program, I would learn about one thing and say like, oh, this is the very best thing ever. Everybody needs to do this. We're all doing kettlebells or we're all doing barbell or whatever it was that I was exposed to. I tend to get really myopic and only focus on one thing, where you seem to like focus on anything. So, bring in other forms of exercise, say resistance bands, machines, what people call functional training. Like why did you gravitate towards the methods of like a kettlebell, a barbell, just simply doing body weight exercises? Which ones do you feel like are the most superior for the most people?
well, first and foremost, what they will do.
Perfect.
If they're not
Great.
going to do it, then there's no sense. It doesn't matter what tool you're using. And what I mean by tools is, it could be a barbell, a Bulgarian bag, a slam ball. There's so many different tools within our trade, and not only physical tools, but the concepts can also be tools themselves, right? Like progressive overload is a tool. Um, Waving the loads, whatever concept. What's another good concept? Like biomechanical breathing. There's different breathing techniques. Those are all just tools in the toolbox, right? So to me, you want to find the tool not only that the person will use, but they'll be consistent with. So, I mean, I have people that I don't use a ton of kettlebells with because they gravitate more towards dumbbells, kettlebells, or they might have physical limitations that I might just have to use different tools with. You know what I mean? So it's a case to case basis, and I think that's one of the skills of the fitness coach trade is being able to adapt to the person you're working with. And sometimes you don't want to just placate them 110%, but you do have to meet them where they are, right? So and saying that, kettlebells can be scary to a lot of people, and so can barbells, so can any of these tools. So starting with body weight exercises can be a huge tool, and knowing how to use these, because these tools can be scary for them. And that might sound weird to us because we've been doing this for so long, but somebody that's never touched a weight of any kind, it can be really, really nerve-wracking for them. So you need to build the trust with them and help to build their confidence before they maybe even ever touch a weight.
Yeah. Well
So
said. It's funny, the placating thing. This probably happened when you and I were working together, but I'll give you a quick, funny example. A guy hired me to do like a 4-month program with him to get him ready for a vacation. And so I sat down and programmed everything and wrote everything out, everything we were going to do. He comes in the first day and I go, okay, we're going to do a pull day. So let's get warmed up. We're going to go do some pulling movements. So we'll eventually deadlift, whatever. And he goes, no, biceps. And I'm like, well, I mean, that's part of it, but that's not our main priority. Like, we'll do that later. He's like, no, we're doing biceps today. So it turns out that the only thing he ever wanted to do is chest one day and biceps the other day. And so, speaking of placating, I would grab a curl. I had to figure out like every which way you could do a bicep curl in the entire
right.
gym. But like, I would at least take a barbell curl bar and set it in front of him. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, at least I know he's going to get one deadlift in the session. So,
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes you do have to disguise things as other things to be able to, because I mean, it's like that. Think about if you went into a doctor and instead of like, hey, check me out, doctors, tell me what's wrong with me. You're like, I think this is wrong with me. Only treat this.
Right.
You would never do that. Hopefully you would never do that. So why
uh,
would you go into somebody and be like, hey, and I get this all the time. Like, I'll get like, hey, I don't want my arms to be too big. And I'm like, always like, don't worry, they're not going to be unless we train for multiple years. You know what I mean? And you're right, eating the right amount and all this stuff. Like, I always had to tell them, okay, you're being too big is like one of the least of your worries,
yeah,
you know,
totally.
but it can be all sorts of weird things. You
Yeah.
know, you've worked with so many people, you've probably heard just about anything. I've heard, hey, I want arms like Cameron Diaz's. I was like, okay, let's do this. And basically you could do almost anything to get those arms, right? Like,
Totally. Totally. I do think of all those modalities, and I prefer to train in a certain way and stick to a few concepts. But for me, kettlebells will always be really special. Like you said, like they can look intimidating. Especially the gym you started when you had the giant like 100K ones that look like a skull or whatever. Like they can be a little intimidating for somebody who's just getting started on kettlebells. Do you have any kind of tips or tricks or things that people can do to get started?
yeah, I mean, just getting kind of a smaller one and getting like a hinge movement down, getting the hinge movement down, and then learning about how to create tension. Those are the two main things. Because once you get the hinge movement down, that's kind of the center of the kettlebell universe. And then you could start building around your hinge movement. And then really learning the difference between a hinge and a squat. Because some people kind of mix them up. Besides that, like get with an instructor if you can. But if you're trying to do it yourself, there's all sorts of, if you just like YouTube StrongFirst Kettlebell, or you're usually going to get a good resource. I wouldn't just go, because there's all sorts of information out there. You know that. Like YouTube can be a very scary, weird place. So I think one of the best things I heard was from Bill Nye, the science guy. He says the skill nowadays isn't in the information itself, it's sifting through the bullshit. Excuse my language. But it's sifting through information, right? That's the hugest skill nowadays. It's just
Wow.
sifting because there's so much information available. It's just sifting through it all. To me, that's the biggest skill anybody can have.
That's amazing. Dude, we've been doing this 5 years. We have 850 plus episodes. That's the first Bill Nye the Science Guy reference we've ever had. And that was a great one. I love that, dude. That's totally awesome. I love it. No, you're right. And all of that to say, which you said inside of everything that you just said, hire an instructor, like spend a little bit of money. It's not going to
Yeah.
be as much as you think. It might not be as many sessions as you think, but to have a professional who's done this for a while and can watch you and help you with this, like that to me is just money well spent. Once you have the
Yeah.
skills, you're going to be fine, and you can
I
continue learning other things using YouTube. But I would really, really, really hire somebody.
yeah. I mean, I could watch a YouTube video on how to change like my Cadillac converter in my car, but I'd rather just take it to a mechanic that
Exactly.
has done that, can do it in their sleep basically.
Totally. Well said. I love that. So I told you this on the train when you told me about your certification process. It would never occur to me to be like, oh, I'm just going to start certifying people. And I know there's like a ton of process in what you want to do, but you and I have been around. We've been around a lot of trainers, and most of them don't last. Some of them are better than others. Some people, obviously, everybody has different skills. Some people are better with people. Other people are insanely good technically, but can't even have a conversation with people. What is it that you saw a lack of in the personal training space that inspired you to go out and say, you know what, I think I can do this at least differently and hopefully better to be able to get better trainers out there to help more people?
I mean, sometimes it's just how you relay the information, right? Like, I don't think I can necessarily do it better, but I can make it a little bit more interesting and more fun. Because just like with any job, you can get burnt out very easily. And I think a big thing in our industry is one is patience. Like people go in thinking, oh, I'm just going to have all these students and clients right off the bat. And then they notice like they're 18 months, 2 years in, and they're like, oh man, I have 3 clients. I have to get a second, third job. Like this is so much harder than I thought it was going to be. Um, so, so I know that's kind of moving away from why I want to try to certify people, but that is just why I think people don't last in the industry.
Agreed.
But also, I think it's a lack of people that are willing to just share the information without making it like this big to do. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so much better than you. I'm not going to share this information. Like, I'm so much better than you because I have these certifications, or oh, I'm a CSCS, or I have my PhD in biomechanics. Like, cool. Like, I respect that what you had to go through to get that stuff. I'd rather just pick your brain, like if you let me, and we can learn together. But you've probably been around those type of people. They're just very pompous and they're like, oh, I paid this much for my brain and this knowledge in my brain. And I will share whatever information I have for free. I do not care. But saying that, I still need to eat. I have
Yep.
kids to feed. I need to keep a roof over my head. And so I think just I want to be able to, which I already do, I just love to teach, which is why I teach, at the university and at the community college and at the private gym I work at called the Sect. I just love sharing information. So I love seeing people go through the process of trying to hit certain milestones. So that's why in the certification that we're doing, we'll have different milestones people have to hit to actually become certified. So it gives them skin in the game. Okay. Because if you don't have skin in the game, you can quit anytime. And I've just noticed that, like, especially in a Western society, people have to have skin in the game. And that's why I like for like a regular personal training session package, I charge quite a high ticket. Quite a high price because it's the buy-in and they have a lot of skin in the game. I'm not going to, but in a, so like in Eastern society, you can give stuff more for free and people will be more dedicated. That's just how people have grown up in their attitudes towards things. So to have these challenges and different benchmarks they have to reach is going to make them more dedicated to learn the information to get better to do these things. So
Yeah. Well, I don't think many people understand what they're paying for. Like when you pay for an hour of time with a really good personal trainer, you'll think of it as paying for that 1 hour. You don't understand the other hours that we are constantly learning and reading and listening and talking to people and refining our craft and trying to do things better, and like this endless list of skills. And that's only the technical side. That says nothing about how we communicate, how we relate to people. These people become our goddamn family after so many sessions that we do with them, that like learning to talk, learning to
yeah.
listen and share and understand and like relate to people. It's this whole thing that's not just like, oh, I got this certification and you should pay me a bunch of money. It's like you're paying for me to travel to conferences and constantly refine my craft. Like that's all part of it.
Right. I was actually joking with one of my clients this morning how he's one of my longest adult relationships because we've been together for 12 years. And he sees me 2 to 3 days a week. For 12 years, he's been doing that.
How
I
many
mean, I
other
know him
people in
quite
that
well.
person's life? Yeah, nobody. No, I guarantee you, you are the person. You have more one-on-one time with that person than anybody else in his life.
Right. And so, I mean, I appreciate that. But on the flip side, I also understand that not everybody's for everybody. So it's like, okay, like I might work with somebody for 6 sessions and we're like, okay, that was great. We reached whatever we reached to, but maybe this relationship isn't going to work. But also, just working on more like the psychology side of things. Like I don't try to replace the psychologist, don't get me wrong. It's out of my scope of practice. But saying that, like just learning how to communicate with people and open up to people and get them to open up. I mean, it's a skill in itself. And being able to do that while bettering yourself and creating these habits and gaining confidence and all that stuff is way more important than any weight you're going to lift or any marathon you're going to run. Like there's so many different whys that are more important than any of the actual tools or concepts we're using.
I love that. I don't think there's a better way to end this conversation, man. I've thoroughly and really enjoyed this conversation. I love your insights on things. It's definitely got me thinking differently about a lot of things, and just to be aware of that. Nutritionally, the things we do, why we do them, I think is so important. I loved your insight, and I love that we were able to have that conversation in a really productive and kind way. I'm so glad I got to bump into you. Hopefully, I get to
Yeah.
bump into you Another time at a game where we actually win would be quite nice. We got smoked that first game. But anyway, can you tell people where they can go to find you and connect with you in your work?
Yeah, so I mean, I have a Instagram that I use at Maticus Rex Fortis. That's my Instagram, and I communicate a lot through there. There's a bunch of story behind that, but we won't go into that. And then I work at this place called the Sect Fitness. So you could just go to thesect.org, and you'll probably find a blurb on me about like my upbringing and all that stuff. But that's where I do most of my personal training in my small groups. It's in South Salt Lake. It's a great place. Then I also teach classes up at the University of Utah and at Salt Lake Community College. I teach just a bunch, strength training, weightlifting, jujitsu, all that stuff. So yeah, that's it.
Do you have to be a student of either of those schools to be able to take your classes, or is it open to the
You
general
don't.
public?
You can actually do continuing ed. You can sign up for the class through continuing ed, or you could just come to the sect and find me there, or just hit me up through Maticus Rex Fortis.
Cool. Awesome. We will, you'll have to explain that to me one day. I can't wait to hear that story, but we'll link all of that up in the show notes so people can find it. And Matt, again, I really appreciate getting to know you over the years. I'm so glad we ran into each other. And thank you for coming on our show today to help educate all of us. I really, really appreciate you.
Yes. Thank you, Casey. It was great. Thanks for having me.
And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.